This week, Line Sniper is bringing in an absolute stacked Fight Night podcast as combat sports specialist Dave Milhouse is joined by a huge lineup of guests with Manpreet Jass, Dan Levi of BestFightPicks, as well as Craig and Matt Allen from Fight Night Picks. They run down the card of UFC 259 and tell you how to make some money this week with bets on 3 title bouts, Yan vs. Sterling, Nunes vs. Anderson, and the main event, Blachowicz vs. Adesanya.
Hello and welcome to Line Sniper Fight Night. I'm your host, Dave Milhouse. I've got tons of great guests for you today. We're going to break down UFC 259 live from beautiful Las Vegas at the Apex Center. Great card, 3 title fights. So I thought I'd bring on 4 different guests and we're going to go around the table. This is going to be amazing. Boys, let's start with this main event. We got Jan Blachowicz, Israel Adesanya. We're seeing about a minus 220 on Izzy. Let's kick it over to Hot Lana here. We'll let Fight Night, or Best Fight Picks, kick this off for us. Tell us about your take in the main event here, buddy.
I'll be happy to. First, I just want to say thank you for having me. It's very exciting to be on here talking about the best fight card of the year thus far. And not only that, I get to be joined by my longtime friend, Manpreet. And for the first time, I get to meet the Fight Night Picks boys. So I'm excited to be here with you guys. We got Best Fight Picks. We got Fight Night Picks, Half the Battle, MMA Lock of the Night. And Dave, thank you very much for hosting. So listen, there's obviously a lot of talk about what Izzy's going to weigh in at and this and that, and we can put stock into that. Look, there are weight classes for a reason, but at the end of the day, I like what he's saying about, hey, this is about who the better martial artist is, not about who the bigger man is. So on one side of the equation, I think we all agree Izzy is the better fighter, period, point blank. However, the better fighter doesn't always win, and I know you guys recall when Jan Blachowicz not only knocked out Dominic Reyes, where he was a big underdog, but the Luke Rockhold fight, too, he was a big underdog. And before someone's like, oh, but Rockhold's got no chin, this and that. Well, before the fight, no one was saying that. Before the fight, Blachowicz was like a plus 200 dog. So now, after the fact, after he launched him into orbit, now everybody's saying that Rockhold has no chin. So Jan Blachowicz is one of these guys you don't want to count out. And as I just said, you don't want to count him out. I'm going to count him out because I got to go with Izzy Adesanya here. But it won't be the most surprising thing in the world if Jan wins because, I mean, if you just look at the guy that lost to Patrick Cummins and you're basing it off that, we're dealing with a completely different guy. And that's what's so inspirational about him. A guy that went 2-4 in the UFC. Now he's the reigning defending light heavyweight champion in John Jones's division, right? So I got nothing but good things to say about him. And the upset will not surprise me. I was in attendance when Chris Weidman knocked out Anderson Silva. So an upset will not surprise me. But as a pure pick, I got to go with Izzy Adesanya here.
All right. Let's kick it over to Fight Night Picks. Welcome to the show, Craig and Matt Allen. Take us through it.
Guys, thanks for having us. Really looking forward to it. And this main event, Matt, it's a great fight. Blachowicz coming in here, like you said, he's the champion in the John Jones division. And he brought his creepy friendship bracelet all the way with him to Vegas. And I look at this fight, creepy friendship bracelet notwithstanding, you've got a fighter in Jan Blachowicz that really can do it all. For me, the fight that really won me over with the Polish power was the win over Nikita Krylov. If you can beat a guy that kind of has every little bit of the game, but can never really bring it together. But if you can beat a guy like that, it sets you up quite well in the division. So for me, Jan Blachowicz, like you said, Dan, you can't count him out. But Israel Adesanya, this is one of the best martial artists we've ever seen, period. I remember on his come up, we had friends and, people out there in the commentary saying, oh, there's no way this guy's going to be able to, withstand all the takedown attempts from some of these high-level fighters. He fought Yoel Romero. He beat Yoel Romero. There's so many things to like out of Israel Adesanya. I know the small cage kind of worries a lot of people, but Jan Blachowicz is one of the stiffest fighters in martial arts. So that kind of won me over with Adesanya in that case.
Oh, I agree 100%. Speed kills, and especially in MMA. And we talk about the weight disadvantage that Adesanya is going to have, but let's be honest, I look at that more as an advantage. Go over to boxing. There's a reason boxers can go up and get so many world titles. Weight doesn't matter as much in striking, nearly as much as it matters in grappling. So for Adesanya, if he can just prevent this from going to the mat, and listen, that's a lot easier said than done, he's going to be the much faster striker on the feet and the more dynamic guy. And for those reasons alone, it's almost impossible to pick against Adesanya in this one.
Excellent. I like it. Manpreet, why don't you wrap it up for us here? Do you see this going any different? I already know you got 50 units on Blachowicz here inside the distance, so why don't you back up your claims, baby?
Hey, who told you that? Who let you in on the Patreon there to let you know that I got that? But no, these guys pretty much nailed it on the head, man. Like this Blachowicz fight, he brings this. The only thing that he really brings to the table here is the fact that this is the first time we see Israel Adesanya up at 205 pounds. But I saw an exchange between Corey Anderson and Jimmy Manuwa, both former opponents of Jan Blachowicz, who's saying that he doesn't see being at such a weight disadvantage as a bad thing. He's going to have the speed advantage here. And that's eventually what's going to end up killing Blachowicz, which is, not being able to track down Adesanya, who is already a wizard in the striking realm. And then I love what he implemented in that Paulo Costa fight, which was that calf kick. Truly slowed down the forward movement of Paulo Costa, brings down the power that's going to be coming his way. And now if he goes out there and implements the same thing against Blachowicz here, where's that Polish power going to go? It's going to go, it won't be there at all. So I see this more as a slow-paced fight, with Adesanya going out there and slowly, methodically picking him apart, staying away from the big shots. And anytime we've seen Adesanya actually taken down, he does a really good job of getting right back to his feet. So that's a very good thing that I'd like to see as well. So he doesn't accept positions on the ground. He's moving his butt right back to the cage and getting back to his feet. But I truly think that we see Adesanya pick him apart and maybe finish him late. I'm not thinking that this will be a quick barb burner of a fight where we see a first or second round knockout. So if you like overs, if you like sweating the overs, I think the over is a good spot in this fight. But I think we see Adesanya get it done late, probably fourth or fifth round after debilitating Jan Blachowicz over those first couple rounds and then knocking him out. Maybe a decision, but I'm going to go just for a little bit of entertainment's sake and say he knocks him out in that fifth round.
Really? Okay. Well, I like everything you guys said. I do agree with it, so that makes my job of breaking this down a lot easier. So I will point out a couple things. Izzy does land more strikes per minute and get hit with less strikes per minute, to the point where, he is a more positive in the strike differential category than Jan is, even though they are both positive. But Izzy also lands more accurately and gets hit less on the accuracy front as well. So he is a better striker. He is plus 15%. If you look at the striking versus expected metric here in the percentages, that's really good. And Jan's only plus 2%. So Izzy, obviously, we all know he's a great striker, maybe even the best going right now. Maybe, we'll see. For me, the one thing that scares me a bit is the small cage and Jan's size. If Jan can eat his shots, he can just walk him down, press him against the cage. I mean, as a game plan, easier said than done. Izzy's very elusive. But that would be the one thing that scares me a little bit. If this is in the big cage at the current odds, I would be unloading on Israel Adesanya. I do have a bet on him, however, parlayed from last week with Ankalaev. I gave that away. It's a minus 124. I'm pretty happy letting that ride. I'm not looking to hedge. I do think Izzy outstrikes him in this fight. But if it does get to the ground, this could be tougher for him to get back up. This is easily the biggest man he'll ever have on top of him. So I'm not saying at all that Jan is out of this fight. I think it's close. I think the odds are pretty good. There probably isn't too much value on Israel Adesanya, but he's certainly the pick. I think they took an opportune time to go be a double champion. I look at who Jan's even fought to get here, and I don't think any of these guys that he beat are like world beaters or worthy of him holding a title. Dominic Reyes is a pretty okay fighter. Corey Anderson, whatever. Sousa, at this point in his career, meh. Luke Rockhold was a good fighter. He got his chin wrecked by Jan. So, none of these are like, you deserve a title shot, never mind the title. Israel's fought the tougher competition, we can say, and he's looked better doing it, in my opinion. So I got Israel Adesanya here. And I do think the line is pretty good, though. I'm not going to say there's a ton of value. Now, speaking of value, instead of wasting everyone's time breaking down this next fight, I'm just going to ask you all a simple question. We'll go around the round table here. How many times out of 100 will Megan Anderson beat Amanda Nunes? Talk to me, Manpreet. We'll start with you.
Ooh, maybe half of one out of 100 times. I think our only true path to victory here is the knockout. And right now you get that knockout prop at plus 1,200, which I think is 8 or 9% indicated that she could get the knockout here. No, you're not getting any value there. Like, if you do think that she has a shot, that's the only prop that you play here. There's no point in playing her straight. She's not going to win a decision. She's not going to submit the black belt to Nunes. So her only shot here is to potentially knock her out. But yeah, no, I'm not taking that shot. Give me like plus 3,000, plus 4,000 on the KO prop, and maybe I'd be interested. But at this point in time, nah, I'm good. Nunes is going to roll here.
Okay. Fight night pick, boys. What do you got for me?
2 times? 3 times?
I mean, unless Megan Anderson gets into the cage and it's one of those Chaz Skelly situations where she's just kind of waiting around for Amanda Nunes to come out and Nunes like broke her foot out back, that's the only way Megan Anderson wins this weekend.
Okay. And Dan, what do you got? How many times out of 100?
Listen, 1 takedown and the fight will be over shortly after. The under is at dog money right now. And basically, it's a situation where this fight has absolutely nothing to do with Megan Anderson whatsoever, even if she wins this fight. Because if she wins this fight, it's because Amanda, maybe she's got too many distractions. I mean, what else is there for Amanda to accomplish? She's the woman's GOAT. She's got 6 title defenses. She's got 2 belts. She destroyed Ronda Rousey, Cyborg, everybody. Like, what else is there for her to do? So with these long reigning champions, they lose when you least expect it. So I do not expect her to lose this weekend. So she's probably going to lose right now. But real talk, I think it's going to be 1 takedown and the fight's over shortly after.
Okay, so we're at about a consensus of a fair line being more like minus 3,000 for Nunes. And when I was looking this over again today, I was like, can I even make a case for Megan Anderson? And no, not even close. We're seeing about plus 650, which implies 13.3%. I don't see her winning this fight 13 times out of 100. Not even close. I would say maybe 7 times out of 100. And at that point, now we're saying there's actually some value on Amanda Nunes, which is crazy to say at this, minus 1,100-ish line. But it's true. I'm siding with Dan here. I think she can do this however she wants, but she's probably just going to shoot the takedown and rain down elbows till it's over. Megan Anderson's horrible off her back. She's got bad takedown defense, reasonable striking, but I don't think it's better than Amanda's. So nowhere on the mat is she better. And with a huge gap in the wrestling, yeah, it's Nunes all day. Probably ends it fairly early. Now, I think, she came out against Cyborg swinging, and Cyborg's a good striker, which I found that to be an interesting game plan. Then when she fights Jermaine Durandamy, not the same idea. Straight to the mat with her. I think she'll treat this more like the GDR fight, straight to the ground and pound out. I actually see value on Amanda Nunes. I can't believe I'm saying that, but we all said it. So let's get on with it. Next title fight. This one is going to be so fun to watch. Peter Yan. I'm still going to call him by his English name. Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling. This is a barn burner. Personally, I thought I was going into this and I thought I was going to make a bet on Aljamain Sterling. I looked this one over. When he was at plus money, I thought for sure that's something I'm going to end up liking. By the time I'm done my film study, I don't like it anymore. I see small holes in each game, but I do think Peter Yan's the better fighter and deserving of being the favorite here defending his title. Now I need to find out if I'm crazy or not flip-flopping. Let's go over to Dan Levy here. What do you see happening in this fight?
I see it being a very competitive fight. So listen, Aljamain Sterling, I got to give him so much credit because this is a guy I bet on a guy named Brian Caraway to beat him at plus 350 odds. And you guys want to know something? The bet cashed. So basically, I've seen guys that, are done with their careers in the octagon beat Aljamain Sterling before. So the fact that he's gotten to the point where he's at now, I got nothing but good things to say about him because he is one of the most improved fighters I have ever seen in my life. Because, he's called the Funk Master. Back in the day, we used to call him the Fraud Master. I wasn't sold on Aljamain Sterling at all. And now I'm sold that he deserves this title fight 100%. The things that he's done to the people he's fought. I mean, who's the last guy that not just beat Jimmy Rivera, but shut Jimmy Rivera down to a point where Jimmy Rivera only landed 20 strikes in the fight? Who's the last guy that ate all of Pedro Munoz's shots and still got 30-27 on all 3 judges' scorecards? Who's the last guy that beat Corey Sandhagen in under 90 seconds? So basically, Aljamain Sterling is the real deal. He earned this title shot. The only thing is, Peter Yan ain't going to go down without a fight, man. Peter Yan ain't just about to lay down for anybody. And one thing about this fight, do not be surprised. Here's my bold pick. Do not be surprised if Peter Yan takes down Aljamain Sterling. I know I just said it. That sounds insane, right? Like, how could, like, wait, but the grappler is Sterling. Guys, you guys know that Piotr Yan fought Magomedov twice prior to him even being in the UFC, both 5-round fights. And the first time he got taken down a good bit of times. He comes back with a championship level adjustment. Now he's the guy mixing in takedowns on Magomedov. And, 5 rounds, the reason I bring that up is because those are waters that Aljamain Sterling has never seen before, because I seem to recall Pedro Munoz starting to get to him with those stabbing front kicks to the body, a little bit of the calf kicks too, but it was mostly the stabbing front kicks to the body. And you start to barely hold on against a guy like Pedro Munoz, which I love Pedro Munoz, but right now we're not talking top 5 anymore. We're talking about championship caliber. You show any kind of weakness against a guy like Piotr Yan, and he will tee off on you. So basically, I think that Piotr Yan is going to outlast Aljamain Sterling. So that still means he could lose, because he could still lose the first 3 rounds, come back, win the 4th and 5th, lose a 48-47. But that being said, I think he's going to win the swing round, which will probably be round 3, and I'm going to go with Piotr Yan. I'm not going to be surprised with a late finish, but I'm going to say Aljamain survives. I'll say Piotr Yan retains via unanimous decision here.
Interesting. MMA lock of the night, Manpreet. Aljo or Yan? Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm glad that Dan brought up the fraud master nickname that I used to give him back in the day, because when I first got into the game and I was listening to Dan and he brought up the whole fraud master thing, I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, Aljo's good and all that, and then he goes out there and loses to Brian Caraway. So I was a little bit off the Sterling train at that point in time, but since then, right, Dan already laid it out. The guy's had a great resume, beating guys, shutting guys down like Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz, and then obviously putting away Corey Sandhagen the way that he did was very, very impressive. But I think one thing that a lot of predictors and analysts will get wrong this week is thinking that it's strictly a grappler versus striker. Yeah, that's what their backgrounds are, but both guys shows great intelligence in other aspects of the game too, like the Magomedov fight, like Dan brought up. When you see him off of his back, his jiu-jitsu does not look half bad at all. Like, people are thinking that he's a fish out of water because he's just training out of Tiger Muay Thai and just only has his Muay Thai and kickboxing to look after. So that's one thing that people should really be focusing on, is that it's not just striker versus grappler. Even on the Aljo side of things, when he's on the feet, like, his hands aren't the greatest, but he does a good job of moving around, using his kicks to kind of maintain his distance and just staying away from the big threat of his opponent's big shots. And I think he could almost even get away with just sticking on the outside and just kicking Piotr Yan, staying away from the big shots, and possibly even out-voluming him here. Because at times you see Piotr Yan almost lackadaisical in his approach, maybe too patient at times. He's almost giving away rounds to Jimmy Rivera those first 2 rounds, and then he drops him at the end of the round, steals those 2 rounds, and that could have easily gone Jimmy Rivera's way if he didn't get those late knockdowns in the first and second round. Then the Jose Aldo fight, right? He's giving away, I believe it was the first or second round, I'm trying to remember which one, but just being a little bit too patient. Whereas Aljo, what we've been seeing from him is just continuously moving around, throwing the kicks out there, and just not giving Piotr anything to truly set his sights on and get comfortable with the striking. Now comes into play the cardio issues, right? You see him almost slow down a little bit in that Pedro Munoz fight, from the body kicks that Dan was talking about to even his calf kicks that were landing pretty well too, that really slowed down the movement of Aljamain Sterling. And one note that I don't think that a lot of people are touching on here is that Piotr Yan is spending the most of this camp down at ATT. One thing that we've been seeing from ATT guys recently, most notably last weekend with Thiago Moises and Pedro Munoz, that calf kick. So if he goes out there and starts implementing that himself, like, he's a good kicker himself, but we don't really see him seek that calf kick as much as these guys from ATT are nowadays. So maybe that's something that he adds to his game for this one. Try to slow down the movement of Aljamain Sterling and maybe gas him a little bit later into this fight and possibly put him away. But based on what we've seen historically from Piotr Yan, he's not really a calf kicker. So I'm going to be going with what we've been seeing historically, and that's Aljamain Sterling moving very well. I think he'll stay away from the big shots of Piotr Yan. And Piotr Yan's not this one-punch knockout kind of guy. He's more like an accumulative striker that catches up to you and slowly beats you down. So if Aljo can still, like Dan was saying, like those first 3 rounds, Piotr Yan's going to have some ground to make up in those rounds 4 and 5. And as long as Aljamain Sterling's cardio doesn't completely fall off a cliff, I think he can survive that entire, the rest of the 10 minutes there and pull away with a decision victory here too. But you're not going to find me running to the betting window to bet against a guy like Piotr Yan. That guy is an absolute G that guy is probably one of the best fighters we have in the game right now. Like, given how they match up stylistically, Aljamain Sterling is something he's never fought in the past. Again, not just a grappler. He has a very diverse and dynamic kicking and striking game. Maybe not as good with his hands, but definitely better with his kicks. And I think that could give Jan some problems that he's never seen in the past. So I like Aljo here. I like him to win by decision, but I'm a little bit hesitant to actually pull the trigger on making a bet here.
All right. Let's keep it on the East Coast. Fight night picks. Let's get into it.
I mean, Matt, this is straight up a difficult fight, right?
My favorite fight of the whole card.
100%. Possible fight of the year, really. I mean, you have two great guys that can really do all of the mixed martial arts. I mean, Dan brings it up. You look at Petr Yan outside of the UFC, the Magomedov fights, and then you look at the fight against Matos on his way out of ACB into the UFC, and then the buzzsaw of a run that he's gone through against some names. Now, that's more the thing. It's names, right? Like Jose Aldo, Uriah Faber. You look at Rivera. You continue on down the list. But it's the way that he's winning these fights. And the thing that I really like out of Petr Yan is we're going to the head, but we always invest in the body. You can see him always going to the body. And if he's ever going to throw a single shot, he likes to throw a hook to the body. If he throws a combination up to the head, he'll toss in a bit of a kick there too. So he really invests in slowing down and breaking down his opponents. And to me, that's kind of the most telling sign of a fight like this, where Aljamain Sterling, sure, he'll run and meet you in the center of the octagon in the first round. In the second round, it's a little bit slower. In the third round, it's a little bit slower. If you're fighting a guy like Pedro Munoz, it's even the points beleaguered even more. I think a guy against a guy like Petr Yan, we're going to see that in spades. I mean, you're going to see Yan investing in the body early if he's able to close some of the distance. He does a great job of cutting the cage, whether it's with his lead foot placement or he'll kind of stick that hand out there to try and keep you within his distance and within his in his space. So I love Petr Yan in this spot. Like Manpreet said, though, I mean, to me, I wouldn't be running to the betting window because I also think that, Aljamain Sterling has a great shot in this fight. And, you don't want to say striker versus grappler. At the end of the day, both of these guys are very adept and two of the better bantamweights. You don't often see somebody finishing Corey Sandhagen so quickly like it was said before. So I really like Yan in this fight, but I am slightly hesitant in it.
So I also really like Yan in this fight, and it's because his ability to make in-fight adjustments. Look at the Jose Aldo fight. He didn't go into that fight expecting to fight southpaw for large majorities of it, but after that front leg did get compromised, he had to switch stances, and he was still successful as the fight progressed. And the fact that Aljamain Sterling is such a volume-heavy striker does kind of play into the defensive mindset of Petr Yan, and I always like a Petr Yan to sort of a Yoel Romero. He's either in all offense mode or he's all defensive. And if you're a guy like Sterling who's giving him a lot of looks, you're throwing so many strikes per round, you're just helping him download your game plan as that fight progresses. And let's say Sterling does start to get tired in that second round. If Petr Yan has your game plan down and you're starting to get tired, that last second or the last half of the second round, the third, fourth, and fifth are going to be absolute hell. So I actually really like Yan in this fight, and it sounds like I'm the only one putting money on him too.
I might be joining you, but I have a different plan for this. I do think this first round is anybody's round. Aljo's going to come out absolutely blitzing, and he is a volume guy. So to me, there'd be no surprise at all if Aljo takes round one. And that's when I'm running to the betting window for Petr Yan. He does make the adjustments. Aljo's gas does drain quickly, and now we'll get nice plus money on him if he does drop round one with 4 remaining. As you said about downloading the game plan, yes, Petr Yan is actually... he's got very high striking IQ. He doesn't mix in a lot of kicks, but when he does, they really count. He kind of presents himself as a one-dimensional boxer type fighter. But the more I look into him, he does have a ground game. He does have wrestling. He can throw his kicks. He can really mix it up. Petr Yan is very well-rounded, probably more well-rounded than the Funk Master, and which surprised me a bit. You have these thoughts, you go into the film study, and then you realize you were off on some things, and I'm more than happy to admit when I'm wrong. I do think that Petr Yan might actually be the more well-rounded fighter here, and he definitely has the better hands. So I do like Yan to win this fight. I thought I'd be betting Aljo, but I'm not. In fact, I'm really hoping Aljo wins round one so I can get Peter at plus money here. I think that's the best way to attack it. And I do think in that round one, you'll get a very good read on this fight. If it's pretty clear that Aljo's, got this under control, you're still going to get a pretty nice price on him up 1-0. So I think this fight's made for live bets and entertainment. If you're going to shove all your chips in pre-flop, don't be surprised if it goes either way, that's for sure. Let's kick this down. This is the fight that I know I'm on an island for. Islam Makhachev, Drew Dober. This is going to be a banger. Hey, I might as well kick this one off because I'm the only one that likes Dober in the whole world, I think. At plus 300, I think this price tag is just way too high. Makhachev, good fighter, good wrestling, small cage. Dober takedown defense, not good. I get that. But I do believe it's priced into the line. We're getting plus 300 on the far better striker, the guy who's had more rounds. He's got more experience in the UFC here. And you know what? Makhachev hasn't even fought in 18 months. So is he rusty or has he made huge improvements? Probably huge improvements. That's what tends to happen with really good fighters. So I'm not like super pumped about Dober here, but you're going to give me plus 300 for the guy who's going to land more strikes if this is on the feet. All he has to do is stuff some takedowns, easier said than done. But in the event he can stuff a few takedowns or at least stuff them early in the round so it's not like 5 minutes of control time in the round, I think he's got a reasonable shot to win 2 out of the 3 rounds, if not get the knockout. Now, having said all that, I do think Makhachev wins this fight, and I do think he probably grinds out a decision, and that decision prop sitting at a minus 105, I think there's some value sitting there too. But since I have this weird feeling everybody disagrees with me here, I can't wait to hear what you guys all say. Let's start this one up with Fight Night picks, boys. Talk me through this one.
Matt, I'm gonna make it really simple. So I'm gonna ask you.
Perfect.
Do you think that Islam Makhachev's wrestling is better than Alexander Hernandez on Beach Street in the middle of a fight?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, then Islam Makhachev wins.
Perfect.
Easy.
I'm glad we're in agreement.
Okay. So we'll keep it
Like
that
Alexander
simple.
Hernandez on, yeah.
Well, I mean, whose wrestling isn't better than Alexander Hernandez? Give me a break.
Drew Dober.
Yeah, but buddy, minus 384 price tag. We're not talking about Alexander Hernandez type price tags here. Manpreet, what do you think here?
Yeah, we're
You're
not
Makhachev
talking
all
about
day.
Alexander Hernandez. We're talking about Khabib 2.0 here. All the chips are on Islam Makhachev, who, you know, Daniel Cormier is singing this guy's praises. Obviously, they train together at AKA every now and then. But there's all these rumors out there that Makhachev is probably even better than Khabib, especially when it comes to that wrestling game. And now you got Dober coming off of 3 straight big wins, knocking out all of his opponents. But, like, you got Polo Reyes, striker. You got Nasrat Hakparas, striker. You got Alexander Hernandez, decent wrestler, even lands 3 takedowns in that fight while rocked. He lands 2 takedowns while rocked. And now you're bringing in Islam Makhachev, who, on the flip side, right, he's only been going up against like grapplers that he's able to truly like nullify, like the Arman Tsarukyan and the Davey Hamoch. And in terms of his inactivity, right, he was scheduled to fight Alexander Hernandez, speak of the devil, in April of last year before the coronavirus, then scheduled to fight Dos Anjos at 254. In October, Dos Anjos tests positive for COVID. And then Makhachev, again, they're supposed to headline a card November 14th, and Makhachev gets injured there. So he's been training. It's not like he's just been sitting on the couch eating Cheetos or anything, or whatever the Russian equivalent of Cheetos is. But I think that we'll see Makhachev go out there, get this fight to the ground with relative ease. His only flaw in his record is that one knockout loss to Adriano Martin, which was like 6 years ago. And I feel like we've seen much better improvements from his striking, a little bit tighter with the hands. In that fight, you see him a little bit lackadaisical with his hand placement for his striking defense, but now you see his hands like topped up, nice and snug up against his face because he doesn't want anything to happen like that again too. So yeah, Drew Dober's been looking great. He's been looking like absolute fire. Unfortunately for him, his path is crossing with Islam Makhachev's path, and it's just not a good one for him. I think Makhachev, the price is more than warranted here. I'd be surprised if we get Makhachev better than minus 400 in his upcoming fights. Like, if he goes out there and absolutely ragdolls Drew Dober, he's probably going to be minus 400 against Rafael Dos Anjos. And, you know, we've seen how Rafael Dos Anjos fares against guys that are, you know, very wrestling heavy. The Kamaru Usmans, the Colby Covingtons. These guys are just able to take him down over and over again. Now you're going to give me Makhachev against this guy? And I'm already talking about in the future. So, yeah, I got Makhachev here. I think he wins this fight, and I think he's very live for a submission as well, too, given that the last 3 losses in Drew Dober's career are via submission. So I think that we see Makhachev kind of ragdoll him on the ground here, and then either an arm triangle, rear naked choke, even arm bar if he wants to throw it up like he did against Cajun Johnson. I got Makhachev all day here, and I'll probably be looking at that inside the distance or even that sub prop, which I think was around plus 400. So I'll be taking a little bit of a sprinkle there.
All right. Dan, what do you got for us here?
So I hope you're right, Dave, man. I really hope that Drew Dober wins this fight. I mean, when you talk about one of the nicest guys in the entire sport, you talk about Drew Dober, and his mindset has really developed over the last few fights. I love his mindset. I did a podcast with him on Half the Battle, and he's really an amazing human being. So y'all should check that out. And also, I got to say this. Everybody remembers what happened the last time Islam Makhachev fought a southpaw striker, right? I know y'all remember that Adriano Martins fight. Not only is Adriano Martins a southpaw striker like Drew Dober, he's also got a money right hook, which you guys know Drew Dober has as well. The only issue is that the kind of wrestler that Makhachev is, like, he's not just taking down, guys with no wrestling backgrounds. This is a guy that took down Arman Sarukian 4 times. He took him down 4 times. So, and Armin's like a serious wrestler. You take down a guy like that even once, that's a statement, let alone 4 times. It's just, it's going to be a very frustrating night for Dober, unfortunately. Look, I really hope that Islam wants to come out here and test his stand-up and, show that, hey, like, I can beat you at your own game, do the whole John Jones. And I don't think he's Khabib 2.0. I mean, Khabib's never lost a fight. This guy has, so he ain't Khabib 2.0. But that being said, he probably wins this fight. Maybe submission, maybe decision, probably not ground and pound TKO. I'm gonna go with Islam Makhachev. But as a fan, since the line is where it is, and as a betting man, I'll just stay away. Hopefully Drew Dober can pull off some magic here, but most likely he's getting grinded out.
Yeah, I mean, I can root for Dober, but in no way do I think he's actually winning or to be the favorite. Makhachev is definitely supposed to be the favorite. He should get this to the ground enough times. I just don't think it's comfortable for a minus 385 or whatever he's sitting at now. I much prefer the minus 105 on the decision prop. That would be my pick. Makhachev by decision. Dober's a tough out. I think he's getting better every fight, so it wouldn't surprise me if he shores up his takedown defense a little bit and, a little bit of submission defense as well. But, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. We're going to have to see this one play out. The last fight on the main card is another banger. Thiago Santos, Alexander Rakic. This is another fight I've gone back and forth on. I'll wrap it up for everyone. Let's kick it over to Manpreet here. Tell us what you got in this 205 classic.
Yeah, I really like Alexander Rakic. I like what he brings to the table. Like, the only stumble that we've seen from him is that Volkan Oezdemir fight, which was a close fight, right? He had like an alien birth growth coming out of his leg, given the calf kicks that we were seeing from Volkan Oezdemir that fight. But he did a good job of pretty much fighting through it, right? Very close second round. I think that's the one that it truly comes down to. But outside of that, the guy's been nothing short of dominant, right? He got hit a couple of times by Devin Clark and got put down. But since then, we haven't really seen him truly like tested in terms of his chin. That last fight against Anthony Smith, like, it seemed like a super demoralized Anthony Smith. He was just giving up takedowns. Obviously, his lead leg was very much chewed up within the first couple minutes of that fight, so that didn't help either. But Thiago Santos, this guy's like 37 years old, coming back after a couple of ACL surgeries. And then we saw what he did against Glover Teixeira, throwing everything he could at Glover. And old man Glover just continues to chug along, gets the takedown, even while getting smacked in the face. Glover Teixeira is moving forward and taking this guy down and absolutely just crushing from on top, and then eventually finishing him in that third round. Whereas I feel like we'll see better striking from Rakic here to kind of maintain that distance a little bit better. Maybe, get his calf kicks going himself too. Thiago Santos has some good kicks himself as well, but I do feel like Rakic at this point in time is going to have a little bit more snap behind them. Not to mention he targets the calf a little bit more too. And then mixing that takedown, the poorest takedown defense of Thiago Santos is just too much of a worry here. And again, given his age, it's just, you don't want to be on that side of 35 going up against young killers like Alexander Rakic, who I believe is 28 or 29 years old right now. So, I think Rakic is going to be able to get this fight to the ground pretty much not whenever he wants. Maybe he'll get the first or second one stuffed. And as long as he doesn't get knocked out here, which I think is a smaller path to victory for Thiago Santos, Rakic should cruise here. And I think, if people are going into this fight thinking it's going to be a barn burner, I think they're going to be sorely mistaken with Rakic playing this as safe as possible, nullifying the knockout power from one Thiago Santos and just grind on the guy, take him down. And one thing I will say, just to end this one off, his fight against Justin Ledet. Now, I know Justin Ledet, horrible fighter. Like, he's probably not even in the UFC anymore. But that performance reminded me of like a prime Cain Velasquez, where he's just mixing in his striking so well and then just taking him down repeatedly. I think he won that fight 30-24 on all judges' scorecards. Just absolute beautiful performance. And since then, I've kind of been on the dude. And we've seen similar performances since then. But I think he has a very high ceiling here. And Thiago Santos, I think he's just on the way out. People fall in love with his entertaining style. Like, he gave great fights against Eric Anders, Jimmy Manuwa. Those are barn burners, right? But again, he's on the wrong side. John Jones, yeah. But again, that's another thing too, right? all these fighters that are fighting John Jones, since they fought John Jones, I think the last 4 opponents are 2-6 now. And the only guys to get those victories are Anthony Smith over Alexander Gustafsson and Devin Clark. Dominic Cruz getting knocked out. Anthony Smith getting grinded out. These guys are just not doing well. So yeah, I like Rakic here. I think he grinds this one out and wins this fight via decision.
All right, Dan Levy, is this line on, or is there some value on Rakic?
So, I mean, he didn't just knock out Eric Anders and Jimmy Manuel. He also knocked out the current champion, Jan Blachowicz. And not only that, he's got the second most knockouts in UFC history. So my head is no one to scoff at. And in terms of the age, I believe that Daniel Cormier won the belt in that weight class older than Thiago currently is. So I think with light heavyweight and heavyweight that, you know, it's not like the young man's divisions like bantamweight or featherweight or lightweight, where if you got a dude that's pushing 40 in those weight classes, well, we know speed is the first thing to go. But I think at 205 and heavyweight, you can be a little bit of an older guy and have success. That being said, man, if Thiago Santos could just improve his wrestling this much, he'd have even more success than he already has. I mean, he's already had a legendary career in my eyes. Like I said, second most knockouts in UFC history, one of the most exciting guys we've ever seen. But that being said, the submission defense and wrestling defense has been an issue since day one against Cesar Mutanch. That's at the beginning of his UFC run. It was an issue in the middle of his UFC run against Eric Spicely, and it was an issue in his most recent fight against Glover Teixeira. So I'm not convinced that part of his game has been patched up. And one thing about Rakic, in my opinion, the jury is still out on Rakic in terms of like how far he's going to go in the division. But one thing the jury is not out on is this is a guy that comes in with real preparation. His coaches are fully invested in him. It's all about Alexander Rakic. There's not, 5 other guys from that camp. There's not 10 other guys in that camp. It's like a champ camp. It's all revolved around Alexander Rakic being the best possible version of himself. And if he comes out here, look, I think he can stand with my head. I mean, I've seen Dave Branch knock out my head. And now, granted, the reason why was my head felt so unthreatened by Dave Branch that he literally fought him with his hands down, which I would not advise anyone to do, especially in the big boy weight classes, 85, 205, or heavyweight. And then there's also a similar situation when Rakic fought Devin Clark. I mean, listen, guys, everybody in the top 10 and beyond doesn't take Devin Clark seriously. So he was so unthreatened by the guy. He felt like he was untouchable. He got dropped twice, woke up, knocks him out. So the reason why I'm not going to sit here and say Rakic's chin might be a little suspect is because the fight against Lionheart landed a bomb in round 2, like a serious bomb right on the chin to Rakic, and he ate it no problem. And I know Thiago hits harder than that, and obviously we don't want to take risks with any moments of Thiago touching him at all, but I'm not convinced that Rakic has a shaky chin. But another thing I got to say, everybody talking about this Volkan Ozdemir fight being a robbery, like Jonah Hill cut. That shit was not a robbery. Rakic won the first round. He lost the next 2. That's 29-28, Volkan Ozdemir. So that fight was not a robbery at all, but he came back better. He bounced back. He learned from his loss, and I thought he did really good against Lionheart. Here, I would recommend going for the takedowns. We know that's been a weakness for a long time. Why even give Thiago Santos a chance to win? But I'm also not going to be surprised if Rakic has a lot of success standing. But I think he's smart enough to mix in his takedowns here. So I'm going to go with Rakic here. Look, he opened like minus 260. And I think for a reason. I know jury's still out on him. I'm not sold on him being a future champion. In fact, my top prospect in that division is Jamal Hill. The way that people regard Ankalaev and the way that people regard Rakic is the way I regard Jamal Hill, but we'll talk about that another time. I'm going to go with Rakic here to get it done.
All right. Craig and Matt, what do you got to say?
I mean, you look at Alexander Rakic, and a great point was brought up earlier. You talk about the leg kicks of Volkan Ozdemir. They caused him problems. I went on a whole diatribe on our show talking about the fact that if you look at Thiago Santos, when he fought John Jones, 27 of 53 total strikes landed to the legs. You look at the fight against Blachowicz, 26 of 36. Then you look at the fight that he had against Glover Teixeira. He landed 2. He landed 2 leg kicks against Glover Teixeira. Why? Because he has really bad knees and didn't post any videos of those knees on the socials all the way up to camp. Now, I know, he's got Yana Kunitskaya going on. He's got all different things going on in his life, but he's an older guy, and both of his knees are shot, and he has poor wrestling. Now, he has a puncher's chance. We know that for sure. He's got great hands. We saw him crack Glover, so on and so forth. So do I worry about Rakic getting hit by one of those big shots? I do. but I'm not so worried about it that actually this is one of the picks for the question mark kicks parlay that we're going to have on Saturday. I like Alexander Rakic in this fight. You brought up the fact that, the lines kind of come down quite a bit. I love him where he's at right now. I think the average on best fight odds is like minus 161 before he came on here. I like him there. If it keeps sliding, maybe I'll wait. I might wait until Saturday and see where it's at then. I love Rakic in this fight. I mean, Santos, you always have a puncher's chance, but I can't just wait and rely on a puncher's chance.
Thiago Santos, to me, is a lot like Allen Iverson, where offensively, he's phenomenal. Defensively, leaves a lot to be desired. And the second he does lose that first step and the quickness in his style, he is going to fall off a cliff. And I do think that those 2 knee injuries he suffered against John Jones, they're going not only to affect him for the rest of his career, but really his life. And we saw that in the Glover fight. Not only did he throw a lot less kicks, but you could tell he's so hesitant when he is going to fight another wrestler. He will let his hands go when his opponent's in kind of like that Goldilocks range for him, because Santos isn't great all the way on the inside. He's good all the way on the outside, but that's not really a place where Rakic will even play around, especially if he is going to go for takedowns. I see this fight going a lot similar to the Ledet fight. He's just going to get him up against the cage, mixing his wrestling with his striking. And the real reason Santos got clipped by Branch was he had his hands down because Branch faked the takedown. And when Branch faked the takedown and did come up top, he cracked him clean. And I can see Rakic doing that game plan the exact same way. Go for a lot of takedowns in the first round. In the second round, it's going to make Santos be really hesitant that he might be able to catch him with a big shot up top. So if I am Yana Kunitskaya, I'm not buying this pay-per-view till after this fight.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, I tend to agree with you guys here, but I think it comes down to one thing, and that's, will Rakic fight with like a good game plan and high IQ? If he's not shooting for takedowns, this fight should be more like a pick'em. If he is going to go grapple heavy, it should be more like minus 200 or even closer to what it opened at. But is he going to implement this, or is there going to be too many exchanges? Because I do question his chin a little bit, just a little bit. This isn't Glover. Glover's got a head like a cinder block. There's no way that Alexander's eating those punches, walking forward through them, and then taking him down. He's got to time his entries. He absolutely has to time his entries. And if he doesn't, then, yeah, Thiago has a very good fighter or puncher's chance. Will he be able to get ahead on the scorecards without mixing in kicks? I kind of don't think so. And that's where I think if we're going to find value, it's on Alexander Rakic. But having said that, sometimes fighters do not fight the way I think they're going to after the film study. And if that's the case here, yeah, I think Thiago might knock this guy out clean, cold out, like wake up backstage kind of out. And so that's the problem for me betting on this fight. If the line drops a little bit more, I will be taking a piece of Rakic. But at this point in time, I'm still kind of out. Like, I just don't feel comfortable fading a man with that kind of power. So yeah, this is a really tough one. The whole main card is really tough. I mean, the only thing everyone's certain on, Amanda Nunes, and of course, fading Drew Dober. But I'm not that confident in that one either. So it's a really tough card. We got some best bets for the prelims. Why don't we each break down one of these? I'll kick it over to Manpreet first. You can talk Askar Askarov, Joseph Benavides for us. Take us through the fight, my man.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at Benavides being at plus money. I know the line is closing a little bit, but I think a lot of people are just reading too far into that Davison Figueiredo fight, right? The guy is just probably one of the hardest punchers in that division, and Benavides easily winning that first round or that first fight up until getting that headbutt. And I'm not saying that was either person's fault there, but after that headbutt, he focuses on a little bit too much. And while doing so, he eats an absolute nuke from Davison Figueiredo and gets put out in that fight. Since then, he fought 5 more minutes. And within those 5 minutes, got absolutely beat pillar to post by Davison Figueiredo. But in my opinion, Davison Figueiredo is a far cry from Askar Askarov. Now, Askarov, undefeated, 13-0-1, still making his name within the UFC. But I'm not convinced that he's going to go out there and put out Joseph Benavides. Benavides, his chin hasn't been absolute dog shit that people are making it seem, right? Like, it's just a Davison fight where he gets put out that way. With Askarov, wrestling is kind of his base where people want to be like, okay, he can go out there and out-wrestle most people. But you're talking about the scramble king here and Joseph Benavides, who just never accepts any position. I think in his last several fights, the only person to get more than 3 minutes of control time against this guy was Dustin Ortiz, and he was struggling to keep him there. You see Benavides scoring very well, scramble very well, get back to his feet, or even just get a step ahead of these guys and then beat them to the position on the ground. So I don't think that Askarov is going to be able to hold him down. I believe he'll be able to get Benavides down because that is something that happens. Benavides can be taken down, but he just can never be held down, and that's the issue. Whereas Benavides, I think he could get Askarov down, and I think he could do solid work from on top. But even if this fight stays in the striking range, I think that Benavides has the advantage there too. The guy's a little bit faster. I think he has crisper hands. He has a knack for going for that calf kick as well now too, since he's joined that, I believe, the Extreme Couture team that he's with down there in Vegas. Yeah, I like what I still see from Benavides. I think he still has enough in the tank to beat guys that like Askarov. Like, he's 36, and Dan touched on it a little bit earlier about, you got to kind of start questioning guys in these lower weight classes when they're starting to push 40. But everything that I've seen from Benavides up until that point of getting headbutt by Davison Figueiredo, he still looks on point. He's still on a 3-fight winning streak. He drops that one fight to Sergio Pettis after a 1.5 year layoff. Another very close fight that possibly could have been scored for Benavides as well too. But I think that Askarov, people are just putting way too much stock into this Davison fight, thinking that Askarov is going to have these heavy hands. The only heavy hands that we've seen from him in the UFC is rocking Tim Elliott. And now don't tell me you guys are going to go out there and compare Tim Elliott to our guy, the beefcake, Joseph Benavides. So that's like really the only shining moment that we see from Askarov on the feet regarding power. Now, he has good success against Pantoja in that third round with his striking, but Pantoja, notoriously known to slow down slightly in that third round, and you see him not being able to react to the shots of Askarov, which is why he's pretty much getting lit up in that third round. Joseph Benavides, we know this guy can go 5 rounds. We know he can go 20 rounds if he wants to. The guy is just a cardio machine, and his speed is always going to be there, in my opinion. So I think he's going to have Askarov beat on the feet. I think he'll be able to out-scramble him. And if you're getting him at plus money, I think it's a very solid shot. Now, if his chin has completely fallen off a cliff, then there's question marks. But I'm not going to draw that conclusion just because he got knocked out by Davison Figueiredo and then, knocked out and then choked out in that second fight. That's very unfair to do against a guy like Joseph Benavides, who's as experienced as him, as much as a veteran as him. The guy's just been all over the game, seen all these different types of opponents, and I think he's going to have Askarov beat in pretty much every instance in this spot. And the last thing I'll leave you guys with, plus 580 on the KO prop. Now, that might sound a little bit crazy, but Benavides has been cracking in his last couple fights where he's hurting these guys, finishing these guys, and we've seen Askarov getting touched up by Tim Elliott. We've been seeing him get touched up by Brandon Moreno, who I'll give Brandon Moreno some props. He's a very unorthodox striker and very tricky to tell what's coming his way. But mix that in with the speed of Benavides and the heat that he's been throwing as of late, and some calf kicks to potentially debilitate the movement of Askarov. I like Benavides here, and I'm surprised more people aren't on him. But I like Benavides here. Think he's live for a KO. But he's going to be my dog pick of the week.
All right, Joseph Benavides for MMA Lock of the Night. Fight night picks. Let's go over Espinoza and Elliott here. What do you guys see happening in that fight?
So we were just told don't compare Tim Elliott to Davison Figueiredo. But you got to agree that the way that Tim Elliott fights, it's like if a rat ate a piece of cheese that was equal parts NyQuil and pre-workout, you end up with Tim Elliott. He's so unorthodox. He's so weird. His striking's awkward. He's awkward MMA. And you look at the fight against Askarov. He gets rocked by a shot. He's stiff as a board. He goes down. He's up. He's all over the place. Like, the guy fights so oddly, and he wrestles all right. He doesn't have the best defensive wrestling. He doesn't have the best offensive wrestling, but he's a pretty okay fighter. Jordan Espinoza, what is he good at? He's a good offensive wrestler, but he doesn't really offensively wrestle in the UFC. He's a good defensive wrestler. These guys go together like oil and water. And in that, I think it's going to go to a decision. I think either guy has a good opportunity to win. I know we were split originally on the pick, but it's really tough for me to see Jordan Espinoza just spamming overhand rights and knocking out Tim Elliott, because that's kind of the main focus that you see out of Espinoza when he's striking. Yeah, he moves forward and backward, but it's a lot of overhand right. It's a lot of the same shots. And for Tim Elliott, really awkward, but is he really going to go out there and finish Jordan Espinoza? I just don't see it. So for me, the second half of the question mark kicks parlay, I've got Rakic to beat Santos, and I've got this fight to go to decision.
I think this fight's going to be kind of similar to the Louis Smolka-Tim Elliott fight, where we're just going to get a lot of fun scrambles between these two guys. I don't really see either guy getting into such a dominant position to be able to finish the other. And really, when you look at the people who've been able to finish Tim Elliott, we are talking about the Davison Figueiredos of the world. We're talking about, it's more when Elliott makes a mistake and his opponent's able to capitalize on it, that's when he is getting finished. And I just don't think Jordan Espinoza is the guy who can capitalize on the mistakes of Tim Elliott to go out there and finish him. Now, yes, I do have Espinoza, you have Elliott, but I think we're both in agreement. Yeah, this is probably going to go to a decision.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. It's going to be a very close fight for a long time until it's not. Someone might get caught in a scramble, but We'll see about that. Let's kick it over to Atlanta. We got Song Yadong and Kyler Phillips. How do you see this one going?
I see myself fading the public here, man. I've noticed that Kyler Phillips is a very popular underdog this week, and I'm going on the opposite side. Look, I think Kyler Phillips is one of the most improved guys in the bantamweight division, because if you compare his Contender Series fights and his Ultimate Fighter fights to what he's been doing inside the octagon, I mean, it's night and day. So he just needs to stay on that path, and I think he's going to go really far, and I think that one day he will be a top 15 guy. But as Dana White likes to say on Contender Series, just not tonight. And the reason why is because, look, this kid Song Yadong is a top 15 guy right now, and he's being so disrespected because he had two very competitive fights against elite top 15 guys in Cody Stamann and Marlon Vera. The thing that everybody talks about is, Stamann and Vera got robbed. I haven't heard a single person say that, man, Vera and Yadong, you know what? That was one hell of a war. That was a 3-round. That was a high-level top 15 fight. That was a war. And let's talk about, because everyone's like, oh, he got taken down. But how come no one mentions that he retained his guard, he got back up to his feet, and even in round 3, which is, people talking about Song gassing, dude, he was landing some bombs on Marlon Vera and Song in round 3. Marlon Vera has one of the most insane chins I've ever seen in all my years watching this sport. John Lineker landed probably over 100 head strikes on Marlon Vera, couldn't get him out of there. Jose Aldo landed some bombs, couldn't get him out of there. I mean, let me know the last guy that knocked out Marlon Vera and the kind of shots Vera was eating against Yadong. I'm just not convinced some of these other guys can eat. And then Cody Stamann. You know what Cody Stamann's record is when fights go to decision? 11-2. So the fact that Yadong didn't even lose a decision, and he would have won a split had he not been deducted a point. So I think people are unreasonably down on Song Yadong here. And listen, like I said, Kyler Phillips is improving. I think he's going to go far. It's just when you look at the guys he's been fighting, Gabriel Silva, 0-2, gone. Cameron Else. When you look at Cameron Else's resume, Cameron Else was out here beating guys that are like 0-10 1 or 2 fights ago. I'm not talking about at the beginning of his pro career. I'm talking about 1 or 2 fights ago. So I'm not buying this whole Song Yadong is overrated bullshit. I think that he had 2 tough fights with 2 of the best guys in the division. And the kid, the funny thing is, I don't know how old he is because he's an ageless wonder. I feel like he's been 20 years old for the last 10 years. But allegedly, he's under 25. I'm expecting big improvements. He moved to the States. He's training with Faber and them. I think we're gonna get a statement win by Song Yadong Saturday night. He opened -190. Now he's -150. I think you're getting a discount on the much better fighter.
I can get behind that. Yeah, I believe Song's 24 years old. He's fought great competition and made a good account of himself doing so. I'm not sure why the market's low on him or if they're just high on Kyler. We'll find out on Saturday night who's right or wrong. All right, I'll wrap it up with this. I like Sean Brady over Jake Matthews. I feel like they're very similar fighters, except Sean Brady's just better everywhere, just by a little, but that's all it really takes to stay ahead. He's got the better striking. I think he's got the better wrestling, throws more volume. He's got better pressure. I don't really see what part of this fight Jake Matthews looks really good in. He didn't look that good against Thiago Santos. It's going to be tough to look good here against Sean Brady. So that's basically it. There's not a huge edge anywhere, but if you're just a little bit better everywhere, you should stay ahead. I think Sean Brady will be in control of this fight. It's definitely his fight to lose. So we'll call it a show here. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This is awesome. This is Lion Sniper Fight Night for UFC 259, and we are out of here.